Marie Doerner, it's all yours.
Hello, everybody. This is Universal Design for Learning in Action. Um, how do we apply UDL in adult ed classrooms? So I've been a facilitator for CALPRO for longer than a long time, 20, 30 years, I think. And but this is up and coming. It's really how do you design your classroom in the very beginning when you're first setting up your class? How do you set it up and you start thinking about all the different kinds of learners that could walk in or roll into your classroom, and how are you going to facilitate them? Okay, so the next slide is our agenda. We'll talk about what is UDL. So someone in the chat said they watched the first UDL. We did one of these 1 hour webinars, and it was very successful, and it was on the CalPro website for people to listen to, and people wanted more. So this is our second installment. Hopefully we can add more to what we talked about last time. What are some strategies for supporting students? And in the chat too, there was UDL for children, UDL for adults, UDL for your kitchen, UDL for architecture. There's also, it's really how do you design the world, the environment to fit everybody. We'll talk about multiple means of engagement. How do you keep people paying attention in class? How do you present the information to them? Multiple means of representation and multiple means of action or expression. How do students show they know what's going on? And hopefully we'll have time for instructional activities and tools right at the end, and some crowdsourcing ideas. And wrap up and closing right at 2 o'clock. We'll say goodbye, and you can watch the video again. The objectives for today are to identify ways to incorporate the UDL principles in instruction and to explore related strategies and tools for supporting all learners. So hopefully use the chat freely, and if you have a question, put your hand up. And this is what I have found as an instructor. I've been working in adult ed since the 1990s, and I've found that the biggest amount of information around is the teachers and administrators of our programs, that no matter how small, some even new people can just, oh, I've got this little idea that really works in your classroom. So learn from each other. It's really powerful. And the next slide is universal design for learning. Our classes, and I work for the San Diego Community College District, and I am the learning disability specialist. I've done small groups, large groups, classes, and it seems like if I have 4 students in a group, 40 students in a group, it doesn't really matter. It's always I have someone who can't read and someone who's reading at college level, and then how do I serve all of those students in the same classroom? And that's where UDL comes to play, because when I prepare my lesson, that's what I want to be thinking. So here are some quotes. Although variability is the norm, and in adult ed, variability is absolutely the norm, and your classrooms are filled with learners from varied backgrounds and a wide range of skills and knowledge, there are scientifically validated approaches that you can use that work for all learners. And that's what we're presenting today. And you also get a website that will give you more. We know learning variability is predictable and can be organized across 3 brain networks targeted by the UDL framework: the affective, recognition, and strategic networks. And so that's what we'll be talking about and break things up for you. UDL is a scientifically valid framework for guiding educational practice. It provides flexibility in the ways information is presented, in the ways students respond and demonstrate knowledge and skills, and in the ways students are engaged. It reduces the barriers to instruction and provides appropriate accommodations, supports and challenges, and maintains high achievement expectations for all students, including students with disabilities and students who have limited English proficiency. So that's the basis for our UDL. You might think about, in the old days, door handles were all round, and you had to have 5 fingers or 4 or 5 fingers to be able to turn, and good wrists to be able to turn those handles. Now, often doors will just be a lever. You can poke it with your elbow, you can use your chin. You don't even need arms to be able to open those doors. So if you're carrying a bunch of groceries, or if you've got a baby in your arms, or if you have no arms, you can open those doors. And that's the idea of universal design in the community. But let's look at what it could do in the classroom. Let's see the next one. Usually, so I'm a learning disability specialist. I test people for learning disabilities, and then I go into the classroom with the student and say, this student needs this and this and this, which means the teacher often has to do something to change what's going on. But the idea with UDL is that it's already set up. So when I bring in a student, the teacher just goes, oh yes, I already have closed captions on my videos. I already have all of these things. So creating a learning environment that supports all learners is the first step. Would be to use UDL as a blueprint for designing lessons, for classrooms, materials, curriculum. All of our classrooms at our school have a station for students with disabilities, so that they have the up-down tables and a chair that is good for someone with a bad back, that it has large print. The second thing is to create options within your existing instructional goals, methods, materials, and assessments that work from everyone from the beginning. So that, like I said, you don't have to go back and retrofit or spend time redesigning to meet the needs of a learner later on. So although it's a little bit more work just in the thinking process in the beginning, once you've got it set up, it will really help you in the long run. And UDL is not a single one-size-fits-all solution. It's not a checklist. It's not do this, 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 and this. It really is a mindset or approach that will help you to continue to be proactive and flexible in your approach to teaching. Sort of use all of the things that you've learned and apply it into your classrooms. So the curb cut effect is for if you're in a wheelchair, they cut the curbs so the wheelchair can go cross the street and go up the next curb. But strollers also benefit from that, or someone doing their shopping and with a wheelie cart can also use it. So that curb cut was put in for someone with a wheelchair, but there's so many other people. Right now, my dog had ACL surgery and can't go up a curb. So my dog is even being able to access the curb cuts to be able to walk along the street. Learners in your classroom may or may not know or disclose that they have a disability. About 50% of the people I test for learning disabilities have not been tested before as children. They always just got by in the classroom, or they struggled and didn't know what was the problem, or they dropped out at a very early age because they just couldn't deal with the school environment. Statistically, you should design your lessons on the assumption that at least some of your learners will need additional support. Here in San Diego, in our high school courses, we'll often have 30% of the students identified with learning disabilities or other disabilities. Of course, we have deaf, we have people with mental health disabilities and physical disabilities as well. So it's just expect that a lot of people coming into your programs have disabilities, and they don't have to tell you. There's no rule saying they have to. Disclosure of a disability is voluntary and confidential. So let's see what's next. So the principles of UDL, I mentioned earlier that there were 3 different areas that they sort of focus on. The first is to design multiple means of engagement. How do it, and I went into, this was all developed by CAST, and I believe that later this will be put into the chat, the link to the CAST. So if you want to learn more, if you've got a couple of days to just look around the website, it's really interesting. I went in there this morning previewing for this workshop. But the multiple means of engagement is, how do you get students to start paying attention to you in the very first part? And how do you help them stay focused? And how do we deal with the emotional needs of the students? We are not therapists. Mostly we are teachers. And our job is not to do therapy or anything, but our students do come with emotional needs. And how do we set up that safe classroom free of distractions and not bringing up the fears that would stop learning from happening? The second one is to design multiple means of representation. How do you present the material? We think about student perception, language and symbols, building knowledge, and with technology now, there are so many ways we can present our information so people can see and hear and do our classwork. And the third one is, how do we know that students are learning? What are the multiple means of action and expression? I mean, we have written tests, multiple choice and short answer and long answer. But how do we measure student progress? What are their interactions? How do they express what they know? How do they communicate their knowledge? And develop strategies for doing this information. And I really like this too, because it shows the pieces of the brain that are active in the multiple means of the engagement is really answering the questions why, and is using the prefrontal cortex and the limbic system. So you see that first. Can we see the next slide? I think you can see the brain there, and it's covering the front part of your brain is the prefrontal cortex, but it's also your emotional centers. That's the parts of the brain that are getting engaged. And the question is really why? Why are we learning? Why are we in the classroom? Why is this important? And let's see the next one. So we're designing options for the first one is welcoming interests and identities. Being welcome in for ways for all of your students feel like they're there to learn. We have adults, and I think the biggest thing, I think it's true with children as well, but for our adults, it's really important that they have choice and that they own the learning. And this is the part of the class where you really want the students to own the learning. And if any of this is making sense to you, if there are words that you see on this page that you think, oh, that's really striking a nerve with me in a good way, pop it in the chat. It needs to be relevant. Our students can learn better if the information we're giving them is relevant, and sometimes they can't even realize that, and sometimes we have to say, oh, you need to know this because and it has to be authentic. We want to nurture joy and play and address the threats and distractions in the classroom. So once you have their attention, then we want to sustain effort. How do you keep going? You know, I have students who have just worked the night shift and they come in the morning. They're tired. They come in full of gung-ho, and after 10 minutes, it's like, oh, I need to sleep. So what are some of the strategies you have for keeping people awake and alert and focused? Some people come from, they've never been to school before. They don't even understand how much do I need to work, how hard it is to work. I mean, I have students who say, oh, I have a headache. It's like, good. That means you're working. You wouldn't want to go to the gym and not feel like you're working. So why, when you come to school, do you think you're not going to be feeling tired, or sometimes maybe you'll get a headache? I mean, we also want to foster belonging and community, offer action-oriented feedback. And here's the emotional capacity I was talking about before, is to recognize expectations, beliefs, and motivations. What's motivating your student? What beliefs do they have? I was just watching American Idol, and a big piece of their training is helping students believe in themselves. And I think in our classrooms, a lot of students come in, and at the back of their head is, oh, I can't do this. And teachers can be very powerful motivators and challenging student belief systems. Develop awareness of yourself and others. Promote individual and collective reflection. And especially adults are old enough and can understand reflection, and they can learn a lot about themselves and the situations by really enjoying that reflection. And then cultivate empathy and restorative practices. Okay, so let's so here are some ways to provide multiple means of engagement. Reduce threats and distractions in the classrooms by creating classroom norms and expectations with learners. Use examples and analogies from student lives and cultural experiences. Ask students to give examples. It'll keep them active, and it'll help you understand whether the class is going well or not. Introduce authentic problem solving by sharing locally relevant concerns. When I first started teaching, I was teaching right out of the textbook, but textbooks are so generic that it doesn't really have this local feel to it. Bring in guest speakers and mentors from within the learners' communities. And that will help students know that you are really engaged in their benefit, and they'll get excited and work harder. So now it's time for you to be part of this. Sorry. We have set up a Padlet. So if you use this, you can either use the link in the chat to get to Padlet, or you can use the picture here to get to the page.
So everyone, if you click on the link within the chat, it should open up in a new web browser. Or if you got your phone out and you were able to click on the QR code, that would have opened up the Padlet on your phone. And Maria, I interrupted just to give people a couple of seconds here to get situated.
Absolutely. I am more than happy for this. And if you haven't done Padlet before, if you notice what we've got is the heading. It says UDL Principles and Actions. What we're doing right this second is we're going to only add things in the first column. What are ways, what are multiple means of engagement? How do you get students to do some of these things? How do you get their attention? How do you talk about local issues? How do you reach them? In the very bottom corner, on the right, there's a little, I think it's green, it could be blue, and it says post. So what you want to do is click on the post. What opens up is a black box, and it says, what's the subject? And I'm just going to write hello. And then I'll write ask students how their day is going. Oh, and then I put my name. So cool. I wrote, hello, ask students how their day is going. I gotta have my other glasses to be able to read this. Sorry. RT wrote, getting students out of their seats. Yes. As students feel very comfortable sitting in their seats and not always doing their best work. There's a lot of research that says that we need to be up and active for our brains to be working. So especially if you've got a night class or students have been sitting around, get them up and around the classroom and it'll get the thinking going. Play a video. After break, I get my students to understand. We've gotten back to session by playing a short video on the topic. We had a class also that every time we came back from break, we had a round robin question. Online, it's in the chat, but it could be something simple as what's your favorite restaurant? What's your favorite kind of food? What do you who do you go to when you need something? It could be any sorts of questions. What's your favorite color? And then students start realizing that although we're all very different, we have many things the same. Build community in the classroom by learning each other's names. Oh, how important it is to know people's names. And connecting lessons to real life experiences. Absolutely. So the next section is in the action, really, the action part of your brain, where it's about gathering information, categorizing information, and identifying information. Is the question is, so engagement was, why are we here? Multiple means of representation are really is, what are we learning? What do we need to know? So perception would include support opportunities to customize the display of information, support multiple ways to perceive the information, hear it, see it, show a video, absolutely. Talk about it with each other. Represent a diversity of perspectives and identities in authentic ways. And for languages and symbols, clarify vocabulary, symbols, language structures, talk about how the materials you're providing are structured, support the decoding of text, mathematical notations and symbols, cultivate understanding and respect across languages and dialects, address biases in the use of language and symbols. It was very interesting. When I did my student teaching here in San Diego, my teacher, who was my head teacher, was studying Spanish. He said, well, I think I should learn Spanish. I'm here in San Diego. I should learn Spanish. So he went to Spanish class, and his teacher was a Spanish person. So he was learning Spanish from a Spanish person. One of our aides was from Mexico, and her Spanish was Mexican Spanish. And our other aide was from Puerto Rico and had Puerto Rican Spanish. So many, many mornings, he would come in and say, oh, this is what we learned today. And then the three of them would just start talking about, oh, this is different from me, or this is the same for the three different, even though they were all speaking Spanish together. And the same thing happens with English, or with the way we do math is, and illustrate through multiple media, and with the use of computers and people's phones, there's a lot of ways to learn. The third part is building knowledge. Connect prior learning to new learning. Check for prior learning, because a lot of times our students, we think, oh, they already know this part, so we can just add on to it. And sometimes that's true. Sometimes it's not. Highlight and explore patterns, critical features, big ideas and relationships, and cultivate multiple ways of knowing and making meaning out of things. Really talk about the metacognitive ideas of, how are you thinking through this problem? How else could we think through this problem? And then talk through that, so students see that there's not one method to get to the end of the road. You could take shortcuts, you take long cuts, and for different students, their understanding might be enhanced by taking the long road, or they might need to just have a really quick way to get to the end. And it's easier for them to understand because they can stay focused longer. and maximize that transfer and generalization. It really doesn't matter if they can do long division in your classroom. If they can't go home and do long division, then that's a problem. So here are some ways, I guess I've been talking about that. Here are some ways to provide multiple means of representation, provide auditory and visual aids, podcasts, get graphs, pictures, videos, include learning resources and learning materials from multiple perspectives, provide ample time and multiple ways for students to ask questions. Use Google Forms. You could use Padlet, sticky notes. If you wanted to get them out of seats in class, put big posters up and get people to go write on the posters around the room. Share your own learning strategies and your own barriers, and talk about how you got over things so that you learned better. Make sure you model, discuss, and demonstrate that learning is not fixed. Our brains, the more and more they're studying brains, they're finding brains are quite plastic and can learn. You're not born this smart. However smart you are now, whatever you know now, tomorrow you can learn more and you can get that brain working. And next. So now we're going to go back to the Padlet. When you work on the Padlet, make sure you just leave it open because we're going to go back to it again and again. So this time we'll do multiple means of representation. So how do you present materials in a variety of ways for your students? Have to... Ooh, play games. I like that. So I'm going to add a post. So go to the Padlet and then hit that post, and how do you present information? Show the video and stop to discuss. One of the things I really like to do. Oh, I lost my... Good, RT is right on it from now. Multiple viewpoints. Discuss with new people standing up. Include introductions, feedback, leave-taking vocabulary. Oh, maybe I put mine in the wrong place is what I did. So what you want to do is right under multiple means of representation, hit the little plus sign. Show videos with captions. Unless it's a really short video, I usually, I always put the captions on. For our DSPS classes, we always need to show the captions. The captions are really helpful for people who can't hear, obviously, but also for people who have a hard time understanding English maybe, and it's easier to read it. It also gives you that two sets of information in. I also like to stop the video and discuss pieces, or I encourage students to raise their hand if they have a question during the video instead of watching the whole thing. Because I do have some students, as soon as the video is on, you can see their eyes just go off into la la land, and they need to figure out, okay, this is not watching TV. Watching TV, you go home, you lay back, and you just let the sound and the visions just flow over you. But when you're learning from a video, it's very different. You have to be engaged and paying attention. So Petra wrote modeling and demonstration. Absolutely, yes. So let's go back to our Zoom. The last one is multiple means of action and expression. So let's do the next slide. For interactions, vary and honor the methods for response, navigation, and movement. Optimize access to accessible materials and assistive and accessible technologies and tools. Take a look at your online materials. They often will have accessible technologies. Your phone has little accessible sections. See what's in there. Use multimedia for communication, use multiple tools for construction, composition, and creativity. I know when I first started teaching, and I was teaching science, and I used the textbook, and I used the test that they gave me, and it was like, I had students who did great in that method, and then I had other students who, no matter what they did, they would fail, and they would come ask for extra credit, and they said, we'll write you a report. And this was before the days of AI, where AI could write you the report. And they would make reports and draw and do all sorts of things. For me, I would never volunteer to write a report. But for them, they did all sorts of things about topics that they really liked, and they learned a lot. And I learned a lot that I needed to give multiple ways that students could express themselves. Build fluencies with graduated support for practice and performance, so that teachers give a lot of help in the beginning and then back off. Address biases related to modes of expression and communication. Talk about different ways. I'm from Australia, so I'll talk to them about how American.
Okay, and it looks like we lost Marie. We're going to give her a couple seconds to come back. Sachiko, do you want to say anything?
Sure. While we wait, I'm gonna go
There
over
she
the
is.
slides. Oh, there's okay, good, good.
Marie, you are muted. You are muted. There we go.
Okay, we're back here. Build fluencies with support and practice. Okay, where were we? Strategy development. Set meaningful goals for students. Get students to set meaningful goals. And anticipate and plan for challenges. I think this is a huge idea, is start thinking about how can students be successful in your classroom, and organize information and resource, enhance capacity for monitoring progress, and challenge exclusionary practices. Make sure that we're not leaving people out. I had three science classes. I was teaching fifth grade, and I had three science classes for fifth grade. One of my classes, no one really could read. One of the classes, people were reading really super well, and then I had a medium class, and then it was like I taught the same materials to all of the classes, but I had to really figure out, well, how am I going to I gave them the same test, but those non-readers, I had to also give them oral tests. I had to figure out, how do I not exclude them and their knowledge from my practices? And I've used that with adults as well. So here are some ways you could do that: is create podcasts, videos, posters, writing samples, and you can read these things as well. Deliver performances, get them to do skits or demonstrations. I know our cooking teacher has students present each week. A student presents how to cook something that they know how to cook. Capture processes. Use think alouds. As you go through something, you don't just tell students how to do something, but what are you thinking about while you're doing that thing. Self-assessment checklists and surveys, learning logs. Use choice boards to organize options in a consistent way to support learner autonomy. Especially with adults, it's so important for giving this learner agency. It's their job to learn. Your job is to present the information. Their job is to learn. They have to change their brains. They have to learn and change the wiring in their brain to accept the information that you're presenting, that your class has. So how do we get them to choose to do that? And the next slide will be back to the Padlet. So go to the Padlet and tell us, what are some ways that you grade your, well, it's not how do you grade, it's how can students show you what they know. Oh, and we've got some people already on it, so that's cool. We have using sentence frames or guided responses. Projects allow for multiple means of expression. And I love science fairs, or you could do a science fair, a history fair, or a my country fair. I mean, if each student studies a country, and you can have a room full of people that wander around and learn from each other. Providing sentence frames or writing support, yes. This Padlet will be up for quite a while, I expect, so I encourage you to come back to it regularly, and you can add to it or see what other people have added to it in this hour long webinar. It's a lot to be able to come up with ideas and put it all down and then jump around from one thing to the other. So feel free to come back to it later. And hopefully we'll learn from each other. So the next part is that we talked about that there are different resources available. This website, it's called an app finder tool. It was developed a long time ago, and it was developed especially for people with disabilities to find resources that teachers could learn to support students. And you can find technology tools and apps you and your students could use for support. Sachiko, you want to click on the link and we can experiment a little bit. So here's the app finder. Now, if you know the name of the app, you can click on the name, or you can just do category. So I would click category, um, and um, and you can see down there's a lot of different kinds of apps that might help your students. Why don't you pick one? Let's see. So we pick note taking, and then I always pick free, but feel free if you've got money to spend, you can click something, and then you pick your device, whether it's you want something that's going to work with Apple, something works with Android. And so here are a bunch of different apps so that you can look at it. Now, I need to say that CalPRO does not endorse any of these products. We don't get money from any of these companies, and we don't endorse any of them. But we wanted to put it out there that you can go out and look for resources for your students. And this tool is really powerful because it can show you all sorts of different technology tools that you and your students can use. So next,
Marie, do you want to ask participants to share what they use in the chat, perhaps, or?
yeah, if you know any tools or apps that you love to use to support your students, yeah, put it in the chat. Let's have a look. Like I said, so I use a, a lot, Padlet a lot, the Padlet sandbox. And as you saw today, just Padlet is really helpful. We have more Padlet. There's Google Voice. There's a bunch that have the students can read. Might be obvious one, but show all my students how to use AI like ChatGPT, and when is appropriate to use it and when is not appropriate to use it. We have Factual.com. You can create your own Jeopardy games. Yeah, this is some really good Jeopardy game places. Kahoot is a favorite. And Wayground. Ooh, I'll have to write down that. So we've got about 5 minutes left, so we're just going to wrap up, and hopefully this gave you some ideas to move forward and to start wrapping your head around UDL. The key ideas were that barriers to learning exist in the environment. It's not the learner. The UDL has the philosophy that if we create an environment of learning, it's the environment that we need to change, not the learner. So if we create an environment that is helpful for people with low English or with learning disabilities or with needing to be in a wheelchair, if we create that environment, then all students can come in. Variability is predictable, and you can design for it. And what is necessary for some can be good for all. My sister is a teacher, and ages ago she had a student who had a cochlear implant, and so they put in her classroom an FM system so that from all over the classroom you could hear her. And she said suddenly the kids in the back were learning a whole lot better, and it's because they were hearing a whole lot better. So it was necessary for her deaf student, but it was good for everybody. And small changes can make a big difference when you incorporate UDL. It's not like expensive. It doesn't have to be a whole lot of change. It's just, having a plan for when something comes up, what are you going to do? Through participation in today's webinars, we talked about identifying ways to incorporate UDL principles into instruction, and we have the ongoing Padlet. Maybe we should have an extra column to add some of these games and resources. It's really cool. Any other thoughts or concerns? Questions? We've got about 3 more minutes.
Okay, while you type in your questions, I wanted to thank you all for joining us today, and please provide your feedback. We value your, feedback, and we will use your comments to improve our future webinars. So please take a few minutes to scan this QR code or use the link in the chat to provide your feedback and comments. And I would like to share that we have one more research forum webinar this year planned, and that's next week, May 13th at 2 p.m. on supporting adult learner transitions. So please sign up if you're interested in, supporting your students transition to post-secondary education. This is going to be a panel discussion. We have representatives from 4 different consortia to talk about their practices. All right, so before you go, please share your feedback. I hope you all got the link before I move forward. And here are the references and resources. Again, thank you so much for joining us today, and have a wonderful afternoon. And thank you, Marie, for your facilitation. And thank you, Melinda, for your support in tech.
Yes, thank you for all the